My name is Gareth Herschel, and I'm a Research Vice President here at Gartner. Today, I want to talk about the topic of collective intelligence. Now, I know what you're immediately thinking: collective intelligence, human and AI working together, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And yes, there is that. And I do want to make an important point about that before I dive into what I really want to talk about, which is three different aspects of collective intelligence. But why collective intelligence, right? Why am I talking about this? The reason I'm talking about this right now on this Gartner Live session, and please do put in your questions or your comments. I'd love to see what questions you've got and give you some answers as soon as I can, and hear your comments and your feedback and thoughts and opinions about what I share. So please do be interactive and ask me those questions or make those comments. But the reason we're talking about collective intelligence is because in next year's Data Analytics Summits, the Gartner Summits, we're holding 6 locations around the world, including relaunching Brazil. So we get to go back to South America and talk to our Brazilian and South American clients about all the latest trends in data and analytics. We'll be doing breakouts and workshops and roundtables and ask the experts, as well as all the obviously compelling keynotes to talk about what's new in data and analytics and what do you need to do about data and analytics in order to be successful. So collective intelligence is one of those, is the theme for the summit. And we started talking about that because it's such a complex world, and becoming increasingly complex, that it feels like every year we say, oh, it's a more complex world than it's ever been before. And that's true. And that kind of means it's always going to be true, right? It's always becoming more complex. We're always trying to figure out new ways of dealing with this complexity. And I think, we're clearly at the point where we as individuals cannot handle that degree of complexity. We need to have systems and capabilities and teams and colleagues who can help us manage and deal with and address all that complexity. So the power of the collective is really what is going to be essential for the success of our organizations. Now, yes, human and AI working together, collective intelligence. Sounds trite. We've heard it a lot. But I do want to make the point that it's about the human and the AI working together. Right? Because very often, people might think, well, in my area, lots of AI stuff in those other areas, but I'm not sure AI actually applies to what I do. Well, bad news. AI is going to be pervasive to every single role, to every single process, to every single organization in every single industry. AI is a reality, and it will continue to be increasingly pervasive across everything we do. So the idea of human without AI doesn't work. But equally, the idea of AI without human does not work. It's interesting it's disturbing, frankly, how many organizations I speak to who kind of have this idea that, human and AI is part of the journey towards all AI, right? Ideally, eventually, we'll be able to get rid of all those pesky humans altogether and everything will be run by AIs. And somehow that seemed to be like the desirable outcome or even the best outcome. In reality, what we continually find is that human and AI working together outperforms, obviously just human, but also outperforms just AI, right? Whether you're talking about medical diagnostics, playing chess, or 101 other different areas, human and AI working together outperforms AI. So it really is this idea of a collective intelligence of leveraging our own, inherent human skills and capabilities, along with all of the kind of capabilities and vast power associated with AI in order to really deliver value. But we know a lot of that already. So what I want to share with you in the next few minutes of this Gartner Live session is 3 other ways of thinking about collective intelligence, right? 3 other meanings for collective intelligence, which hopefully will challenge you a little bit, will provoke you a little bit, and give you a new way of thinking about what you're trying to achieve in your organization as you think about data and analytics and AI generally. First, there's the idea, and I'll come back to these in slightly more detail, but just give you a taster right now. First, there's this idea of alignment, right? If we're going to be a collective, then we should be aligned, right? We should be delivering value to our organization, achieving our organization's missions and goals, whether it's saving the environment or making money, right? We need to be aligned and have a shared vision of how data and analytics and AI can deliver value against achieving that objective, right? Achieving that outcome. So alignment. Second aspect of collective intelligence is really the ability to play to our strengths, to recognize that as a collective, we all are individuals. We all have individual strengths, individual talents. How do we mesh those together to deliver value to the organization? And thirdly, we need to think about the idea, again, as a collective, we have to sacrifice some degree of our own individual priorities. I really like this, but when I'm going to dinner with my family and with my friends, I compromise and I go and eat that food instead. That's part of being a collective. And it's this ability to reconcile and balance the competing objectives of different parts of the organization that makes us a strong collective. So let me cycle back and talk about those in more detail. Let's talk about alignment, because one of the key things you need to establish a collective is alignment, right? Everybody sharing a vision, everybody committed to the same mission, to achieving the same goals, to achieving the same outcomes. And we in data and analytics have a huge opportunity to deliver value and impact across the entire organization. Right? There is literally not a single part of the organization, not a single process that we from a data and analytics position are unable to influence, are unable to impact and drive value. But we need to be able to communicate that value. Right? We need to be able to communicate the value that we can deliver to every process, to every stakeholder across the organization. And that's one of the things we know organizations struggle with is, it's quite easy to take a dashboard and say, we shared this dashboard with the sales team and look at the increase in sales that came out of that. Or we built a predictive model to identify high-risk customers. And when we did marketing campaigns to those high-risk customers, we were able to reduce churn. Right? It's a fairly, there's a lot of other externalities that might factor into that, but it's a fairly easy connection to make. But what about when you're talking about a data lake? Right? When you're talking about data governance, when you're talking about some other kind of more infrastructural capability, right? What is the way that you deliver value there and communicate that value? And one of the things that, we need to do as a collective is to be able to explain that clear causation, that clear set of activities that leads us back to that investment, right? This is the business outcome we are trying to achieve. These are the decisions that will enable us to achieve those outcomes. And those are business decisions, right? I rededicated my sales force. I reorganized my warehouse. Like, these are the business decisions that we made that delivered this outcome. This is the analysis. This is the insight that will enable us to create, a better decision, right? To influence the way decision makers think about the problem so they come up with a better solution to that, right? So this is the analysis. This is the insight we need. This is the data that we need in order to create that insight. And these are the infrastructural capabilities: data quality, data governance, data privacy, data security, data integration, data management, all of the things that we need to do in order to create that analysis. So we have this clear value chain from our deepest infrastructural capabilities through to the business impact they deliver. So when we talk about collective intelligence, what we're talking about is a shared vision for the organization, a shared drive towards a goal and set of business outcomes with a clearly understood set of connections that link all of the pieces we do, all of the things we do towards that shared outcome. So that's number one. Second thing we need to think about when we talk about collective intelligence is that we need to play to our strengths. Okay? Marcus Buckingham, I once attended one of his presentations, and he came up with the best definition I've ever heard of the difference between a leader and a manager. And this has stayed with me throughout my entire career. He said a leader is that person who drives the alignment, right? What we just talked about. Leaders create a shared vision, a shared manifest destiny for their organization that will lead them together to that goal. Managers differentiate the individual skills and talent of everybody in their organization, everybody in their team. So leadership is establishing everybody is the same, everybody is together. Management is understanding that everybody has their own strengths, their own talents, their own skills, their own priorities. And as a team, we can be best when we play to our own individual strengths. So what we are talking about is empowerment. We're talking about empowering our people to be the best that they can be at whatever it is, right? What role do they play? What skills do they have? How is the organization structured in order to deliver the best value, right? What's the balance between centralized and decentralized teams? Who does what in the organization? What roles do you need to hire? Do you need to hire data stewards? Do you need to hire decision scientists? Do you need to hire data engineers? Right? What are those roles that you're going to hire to populate that team so that everybody gets to play to their strengths, so that everybody can deliver the value that you have as a collective? All the individual intelligences aligned and meshed together to deliver some great outcomes. So that's really kind of the second thing you could draw out of this idea of collective intelligence is not just how are we all the same, how do we deliver a clear value proposition to the organization, but also how do we organize ourselves so that we are able to deliver that value. The third aspect of collective intelligence that we need to think about is this idea that just as a team we can be unified and as a team we can play to our own strengths, we also have to recognize that different people have different priorities, right? That there are inherent tensions, inherent conflicts between different parts of the organization based on their culture, based on their mission for the organization, based on the changing priorities of your organization, right? So we're always in this kind of state of dynamic tension where the collective needs to come together to establish a common way of working, a common set of priorities that maybe aren't the individual priority of any one of those groups, but by working together to optimize the outcome, they are able to achieve their best outcomes. Right? For example, balancing, do you want better, faster, or cheaper? Right? Now, our tendency as technologists, as analysts, as data people, is always to build the best thing that we possibly can, right? And every time I see a data and analytics strategy from an organization, right, it's almost always, here's how to build the best system. And the best system is often defined, unfortunately, in relatively technical terms, right? It's the best data lake. It's the best data architecture. It's the best data integration technique. And what we have to recognize is that there is a balance there, right? There are trade-offs. By building the best thing, we're probably no longer building the cheapest thing. We're probably no longer building the fastest thing, right? We have sacrificed fastest and cheapest in exchange for the best. Maybe that's okay, right? That's part of the discussion you need to have within your organization. Part of the policy of establishing a data and analytics strategy is to decide, relatively speaking, do we want the best? Do we want the fastest? Do we want the cheapest? Or do we want some combination of those things? And what are the trade-offs that we're willing to make? Because we may want to build the best thing, but maybe the business needs the fastest thing, or the shareholders need the cheapest thing. So we have to be able to make that trade-off. We have to act as a collective and recognize that when you are part of a collective, you have to sacrifice some priorities in exchange for others. So questions such as, do we want a robust system with built-in redundancies and failure points and capabilities, or do we want an efficient system, which is maybe a little bit more fragile, but is probably much more efficient, right? What's the trade-off that we want to make between robustness and efficiency? What's the trade-off that we want to make between having open data? Everybody can see everything, and that can create some incredible ideas and incredible insights because everybody has access to all the information across the organization. Or do we need to worry about privacy? Do we need to worry about security? And obviously it's both, but what's the trade-off, right? How do we manage that question? So that's another way of thinking about the collective and collective intelligence I'd like you to think about is not just how do we mean collective intelligence of everybody driving towards a common goal, and not just collective intelligence where we are sharing the collective intelligences, the collective strengths and priorities and capabilities of everybody in our organization. And how do we build a team that facilitates that? But also, how do we balance the various priorities that exist within our organization, within our own team about what we are trying to achieve? These are not simple questions. These are the challenges that we see organizations grappling with every day. And if you would like to attend a conference where you will hear experts from across Gartner and beyond talking about these issues, giving you guidance about how to address these, the chance to network with your colleagues and share roundtables, attend workshops where you will be able to discuss these topics in much more detail, please come to one of the Gartner Data Analytics Summits next year. In particular, I want to call your attention to the fact that we are relaunching our Brazil Summit. So we have a great opportunity to engage with clients in South America with all of these types of value, networking round sessions, breakouts, compelling keynotes, workshops, all of these sessions available to you around the world in 2024. I hope to see you there. Thank you.